am so freaking excited about this episode, I can't even take it. It's the change of the season. That's what I love. I mean, I love Florida, but life is about change. And here we go. We're going to step right into the springtime, summertime of Maine. We're going to do a lobster catch and cook. It doesn't get any cooler than this. God, I hope you guys enjoy it, because we certainly did. You can hear the birds chirping, and it's starting to get warmer spring. It's like 75 right now and sunny. And the best part is, it's the smell. I mean, there's nothing like the Maine ocean smell. It is one of the best smells on earth. It's like, I don't know, it's like a clean ocean smell. It's a cool, clean smell. Oh, it's so nice. Spring in Maine, or late spring in Maine, is absolutely phenomenal. So here we are. We're gonna get on that boat. We have some lobster traps out there, way out there. Actually, not way out, about a mile out. That's the open ocean right there. You can see the beach. And we're gonna haul some traps, and we're gonna do a catch and cook lobster bake right here. It's gonna be awesome. Okay, but first we have to back up. It's not all this beautiful and pretty. It's actually kind of messy sometimes. So we have to back up for one more step, and that is baiting the lobster bags. You have to deal with some pretty nasty bait. You stuff them in the bags, and this is what it looks like.
And fortunately for you guys, you don't have to know what it smells like.
Okay, now with the nastiest part done and a bunch of other prep work, like getting the traps in the water, getting the lines on the traps, and the buoys painted, it's time to get down to the dock and get this boat out to pull some traps. The first thing we do when we get down to the dock is we push the down button on the hydro hoist, and that puts the boat in the water, and it allows us to start the motors. Once we get the dog on the boat, which can be a challenge, and sometimes we forget him, which is awful sad, we back the boat out of the cradle, and we're off to go haul some lobster traps. Some people have actually said, Mike, why are you using a Scout to pull lobster traps? So I'm going to answer that right now. The answer is simple. Life is a journey, and part of that journey might be going from your dock to get your lobster traps. And if you can't crank the music and get some airtime in the meantime, then I think you're missing at least half the fun. Well, we're here at our first buoy. The traps have been in the water for a few days, and now it's time to get organized, lay all of our tools out, and configure the boat so we can haul these traps. In order to not damage the boat with the traps, we've actually made this custom 3/4 inch starboard plate that goes over the gunnel. And you can see I use a male pin that fits into the existing fender quick disconnect hole in the gunnel. So we didn't have to do any modifications. This goes on the gunnel, and it protects the boat and allows us to haul these traps and keep a nice boat. And now for one of the challenging parts of this whole operation, and that's grabbing that lobster buoy. Sounds easy, but with wind and waves and current, it can be a little tricky. You can grab the buoy and the boat can be blown off, or you can miss the buoy, you can go under the boat and get trapped in the motors and get wound up in the motors. All these things have happened, but the more you do it, the less you screw up. And now, we screw up like 1 out of 20.
Honey, it used to be 10 out of 20.
This is my favorite part of the whole process, hauling the traps up off the floor and seeing what you're gonna get. It's like Christmas, like dumping your stockings upside down and seeing if you're gonna get those Reese's Pieces. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get licorice, and it sucks. It's also a fantastic glute workout, as you can see.
Sometimes the best thing you can do with a neurotic dog is just to stuff him in the bow.
And then close the see-through window. He does get a little upset, but at least he can see what's going on and feel like he's part of the family. Kind of. And now for the most delicate part. This is a 50-pound trap you're trying to lift up and over the gunnel without hitting the boat. But it's worth it because you can hear those flappers and you don't ever know what you're going to get, but you hope for that sound, that flapping sound of the tails. It means there's lobsters in the trap.
Sometimes the lobster just refuses to let go of the trap. And the trick is to wiggle him a little bit and he'll loosen right up.
Once we get the lobsters out of the traps, they go to the middle station where my little one, she's measuring the lobsters' carapace to make sure they're legal, and if they're not legal, they get thrown back.
And right now, little Sydney is checking for V-notches. We'll explain that later in the video.
Is it a keeper?
Yes.
Hey, bandit. And yes, if you're wondering if she's been pinched before, yes, she has. But you know what? If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. It'll certainly make her smarter. And I'm not a helicopter parent, so you got to sit. You might have also noticed the broken blisters under her palm from doing gymnastics. The next part of a lobster catch and cook is actually the stinkiest. It's rotten bait that's even more rotten. And you have to dump it out of this bait bag, the old bait bags, put the new bait bag in. It is stinky, and sometimes when you shake the bait bag, a little particle of rotten flesh gets in your mouth and under your nose. It's really nasty. Right there, I'm signaling to Sarah, who's captaining the boat, to go to starboard, but use the port motor. And that way, we don't catch the line of the lobster buoy into the motors. All right, well, it's my turn to haul my traps. Now we have 5 traps for me and 5 traps for Sarah. That's how the state of Maine regulates the lobster season for a recreational fisherman. 5 traps per person, no more than 10 traps per boat. And yes, each individual technically has to haul their own traps. And anybody who's cleared a lobster trap knows there's always that one, and the struggle is real. It's kind of little. Watch the other one. Watch the other one.
No,
Get
look at
You said you jammed up? So kind of just do it quickly. See? Here you go.
babies.
We're able to have our non-commercial recreational lobster license because Maine has done such a fantastic job protecting this resource.
And they do it by making it a rule you have to throw back females that are pregnant with eggs and or V-notches. Now V-notches come from another lobsterman who has caught a lobster in the past and cut that V-notch in that tail fin, showing that that female did have eggs and is now reproducing, or at least reproductive. So it goes back to the population, hopefully has a ton more babies, and voila, we're able to have a ton of lobsters and I'll be happy.
Now show me the V-notch.
And finally, you do find all kinds of cool things in your lobster traps that may not be lobster. The first here is a Maine spider crab, and it is so cool. It's so well camouflaged. It has all kinds of seaweed all over it. You can't even tell what it is. This little thing is so weird, I can't tell if he's creepy or if he's cute. But I'm siding on cute. Go, little fella. Be free. And the second is a huge knuckle-crunching Jonah crab. Now, this crab's big enough, if it latched onto a knuckle, it's going to do some damage. Well, I'd love to be out here all day, much to my wife's chagrin. It's time to head back. But before we head back, I wonder if you noticed those two fish around the lobster trap when we sunk it. I wonder if you can tell me what they are. If you saw the fish and you think you know what they are, come to our Facebook channel and leave a comment. And with 10 traps hauled, we have about, 10 or 12 lobster. We're not going to eat them all, so they're going to go in our keeper. A keeper is simply a holding cell for the lobsters, so you don't eat them all at once and waste them. And we're just going to go back with 4, 1 for each of us. It's perfect. A couple miles later, we're home. Now it's time to start the fire and get to cooking.
Now, if I can just get the boat onto the cradle without smashing it.
No. Gosh, not a big deal, guy. Now, I just used my little helper to unload the lobsters, get the lobsters up to the fire pit, and get them in the steamer. Well, everybody has their own way of cooking lobster, but for me, I like to steam them, and I like to steam them in beer. It's potatoes sliced thinly with butter. They're gonna go on the fire pit. All right, let's see all these potatoes. Ooh, look at that. That's gonna be great. Some of them are a little burnt, but I think that's gonna be great. So those are good. For me, hearing that fire crackle and listening to that steam and just looking out over the ocean, it just doesn't get any better than this. It's about the journey, but the destination is just as good sometimes. And it's time. It's been about 20 minutes steaming. The lobsters are super red. They're perfectly done. And we're going to eat these outside, even though it's a little cool out today. I think that rounds off the whole experience. I know there's a ton of how to eat lobster tutorial videos out there, and that's not what this is. But I do want to show you a couple cool techniques that might help you next time. So one of the most rewarding things is a full piece of claw meat that isn't all broken apart. And in order to get that, it's pretty simple. Instead of taking the crusher claw or pincher claw and kind of just cranking back in the claw and ripping it off, which will leave that piece of hardened kind of shell up in the meat, you just crack it side to side a little bit and kind of wiggle it out. And you don't get too aggressive with it. And if you do it right, that whole piece of like inner hardened shell should come out of that claw meat. And then you just crush it in the center. And again, you're being careful when you pull it out. And if you do it right, you should have one piece of claw meat all connected with no inner shell inside of it. And it is the best part of the lobster. I feel there's a little bit of overacting going on here. It doesn't get any better than that.
Said?
A fresh lobster claw, dipped in butter. All right, lastly, what I like to eat is the tail. And the tail's a lot, obviously everyone knows how to eat a lobster, most people do. But the little tricks help out. So you crush inward like this, and you break that on the inside, and you pull that out like this. And you take this big piece of tail meat out. Some people eat it like this. This is bad. Well, it's not bad. You can eat lobster how you want. However, if you eat it like this, you're eating the pooper, okay? There's one thing that you have to do that I've seen people not do, and they're like, oh my God, I've been doing that for 30 years. I'm like, yeah, you've eaten the poop. So here's how you don't eat lobster poop, if you don't know. You take this little flap and you peel it back, okay? You peel it back all the way. You put that in your warm water, and this is good to eat. Clean that up, and then the butter. This is the poop right here. See that? That's the poop. You don't want that. So we take that, and we just kind of peel that back. It's like a shrimp. You got to get rid of that in the shrimp, and same with the lobster. And then you clean it all up. And then you have a nice fresh piece of lobster meat without the poop. Some people may want the poop. I don't know. Even though Yukon was in the boat today up front, because he usually bothers us quite a bit when we lobster, and he was basically tucked away in his little cage up front in the bow, he gets lobster too. And Mummy's now gonna command him.
All the way down. Well, that was awesome. That wraps up our lobster catch and cook.
I had an absolute blast. I mean, to go out there with your family, your wife and your daughters, and catch Maine lobster and cook it, it doesn't get any better than that. All right, stay tuned for our next adventure, which is going to be haddock fishing offshore, where we see some pretty big fish. Get it! Oh, that's a huge shark! Huge shark! Go get it, honey! Get it underwater! Oh, that thing just took off. Wow! That was legit. What did you think of that? Honey, we're not alone. And yeah, I think we're going to need a bigger boat. Shucks.